Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the Distributors Deliver podcast. My name is Eric Hoplin. I'm the CEO of NAW. My guest today is Jason Seger, the CEO of Border States. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, glad to be here. Thanks for having me, Eric, as part of the podcast and part of the NAW Executive Summit this year as well. Great, as always, to have this on my calendar and look forward to it every year. So,
well, we've had a bit of a snowy Executive Summit, and some folks had a little trouble getting here, but the audience is full, and we're having some great discussion. So, talk to us a little bit about some of the highlights. What have you enjoyed from the summit so far?
Yeah, it's been a great session. Little challenge getting here, but I think it's a good representation of the character and distribution.
It sure is.
We talked about that.
Very resilient.
We're here. We're resilient. We're showing up. Great session with George W. Bush this afternoon. Just a great reminder of what it means to serve the country, and a great job I think he did. Whether you politically align with his views or not, just a great representation of what it means to have the country really in your best interest and what's right for the country overall. So that was a highlight this afternoon.
Yeah. And you and I were talking behind camera a minute about his decision making too. How did that strike you?
Yeah, so decision making for me, really talking about using information, using data, using information, using people that are experts in what you're thinking about to brief you and to get information to really inform your decision making, and then think about what is the right thing for the country. So really insightful to hear his decision making. The other piece for me that stands out with the summit thus far is just a great reminder for me of the impact distribution has.
Absolutely.
We know it, we're in the industry, but think about the backbone that it is for the economy, for the country. And we often talk, at least within our company, about a lot of us got here by accident.
Yeah.
And we've got to stop talking about it that way. This is a great place to be. There's so many amazing companies and people, and the leaders in this industry they're part of amazing things, big projects, and on the front leading edge of so many cool things. It's a great place to build a career.
It sure is. Distribution is at the core of the economy. But, one of the things that I love about it as well is I have a chance to go to distribution centers all over America every single week. And we got happy employees that we take care of them. We're helping them make sure that they're having successful lives and reaching for that American dream. And I know it's something you guys at Border States focus a lot on.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit about Border States for those that maybe don't know us well, just to maybe a little sense of that. So we started back in 1952 in Grand Forks, North Dakota, and we started with the support of electrifying rural America. So part of the tail end of that electrification effort across the rural Dakotas, and today a $5 billion business, which is pretty amazing. Yeah. Serving across 3 core markets: construction, industrial, utility, 130 plus locations, 3,600 employee owners across the business. And to your point, those owners, they live and they work in the communities that make up America and where our customers serve. And they don't just do the job, they help power communities, they strengthen industries, they make communities stronger, which is pretty cool. Big part about our company, we are 100% employee owned.
Okay.
So not a secret sauce anymore, but certainly an important ingredient for who we are. And I tell people, I get to talk about our business all the time, a great reputation in our industry, but it's made that way by all the employee owners. They make our reputation, they build our brand, they are the company that is Border States. So proud and privileged to serve all of them as president and CEO.
Well, let's talk about that for a minute, because if I have my dates straight,
Yeah.
You came into Border States around 1999,
You got it.
and then became CEO in 2024. So talk to me about growing up at the company. What was that journey like?
The starting point for me, number one, I started as an intern out of college.
Are you kidding? Really?
And kind of a fun, we meet with interns today, it's a kind of a fun story to tell of look where you're at today and look where you can end up.
Got to do a little hard work in between.
A little hard work in between. But again, in college, I literally had a professor that I trusted, needed to do a work study. I said, Wade, where do I go? He said, go to Border States. They have an employee ownership thing. It's pretty cool. I trusted Wade, went to Border States, got that internship, and really have had a great journey there growing up. When I started there, probably a couple hundred people in the business, maybe $200 million in top line revenue. Again, $5 billion today, so a lot of growth along the way. I've had the privilege of working for some amazing leaders, many that Tammy Miller, David White. I've had the chance to listen to, learn from, be coached by some amazing people, which
really helps to have great mentors along the way.
Oh, for sure it does. That's actually a great thing about NAW as well. You get to come here and meet all kinds of people who are going through things that you've been through or looking ahead to some of those things in the future. Great way to build relationships, networks, and learn and grow together. So a great journey at Border States, just taking care of families along the way. To your point, taking care of people. It's great people, taking care of each other, taking care of the partners they work with, taking care of customers along the way. And if we keep it that simple, and it's hard to make it that simple all the time, but if we do, so many things go right if we take care of each other, our partners and our customers.
So you've been in the CEO slot here now a year and a half, 2 years?
Yeah, a couple of years.
A couple of years. What surprised you when you got the top job?
It's interesting. You work hard to prepare, and we've got a very, very, I will say, structured succession process. So you're going through kind of the rigor and the steps, and you think you're pretty ready for it. And day one, you sit in the seat and you start to look around and go, oh, this is the job. Okay. So for me, I think it was I've been there 27 years, to your point. And so have seen the company grow up, really know the ins and outs, understand how the business needs to operate. But when you're sitting there and you have the gravity of 3,600 employee owners and their families relying on the decisions that you make for their financial well-being, maybe the legacy generationally for them financially, things hit a little bit differently. So you think about it a little harder, but you get comfortable with that. I think over time, I certainly have. And for me, I would say maybe the movement around most in the job, AI technology is moving at a faster pace than I probably could have imagined when I stepped into the role. Even though it was moving pretty quick then, it's even accelerated since then.
Yeah, we had Carol Tomei, who's the CEO of UPS at the Innovator Summit, and she said, if I could just stress one thing, is everyone talks about how AI and technology is advancing quickly. She said nobody understands really at the pace that it's moving. Is the world is changing in months, not years. So how did distributors get ahead of that?
It's interesting. So I do think it's going to be exponential, to your point. What we see is maybe the growth curve today of how it learns and how it can impact the business. I don't think we understand what it's even going to look like. So I think you've got to be intentional. Like you've got to be invested. You've got to be in the game first. So, there's people on every spectrum, I think, of kind of the AI story, right? There's some who early adopters and they want to try it. Some who are afraid of it, afraid it's going to take jobs and, where's it going to leave me? Now, the reality is we're going to need AI to fuel efficiency in the business, and all of us looking to grow our businesses. It'll allow us to leverage the talent we have to upskill, to reskill. Right. It's not going to take jobs. It is going to allow us to be more effective serving customers and really over time drive better profitability back into the business and really be sustainable in that regard. So what do we do about it? You've got to lean in. I think you got to dabble a little bit. You have to take some risks.
Yeah. What happens when you fail though? Because you're not going to win every single time. Right?
You're not going to win every time. And I think you go back to you referenced Tomei from UPS at Innovation. I think I wasn't there. I heard actually some of the comments.
Good.
Yeah, which were very good. Yeah. And I think one of the things she talked about was the notion that when you do fail, you're one step closer to success.
That's right.
You found one thing that isn't the answer. And as a business, we're not always great at that. So we're really culturally talking about how do we think differently about acknowledging, because we're going to have to, right? We're going to have to try some things. Not all of them are going to work out. How do we even more publicly within our organization communicate that and say, we made a mistake. That wasn't the one, but it got us one step closer to the thing that is going to unlock that potential and that ability. So important to fail, but fail fast and learn from it along the way.
Now, Jason, you are known as a people-centric leader. People talk about it all the time in the industry and at Border States. Tell us, what does that mean, and why is that important to you?
Well, for me, I've grown up in the business, as an intern starting out, and I never want to assume that, number one, that I have all the answers. I don't. Yeah. You've got to have a great team around you, and I think the higher you go in kind of leadership, responsibility, sometimes the more insulated you can become. And it becomes a bit of an echo chamber if you're not careful. Sure. And so it's really important to stay connected with our customers and what they're saying about the business. If we get to a location, I want to spend time talking to the delivery drivers, the person doing receiving and put away in the warehouse, the person cutting wire, the inside salesperson. They have a lot of feedback that helps us validate or really understand we've got to course correct in some places. So we have formal ways we do that with engagement surveys, but informally for me, that's one of the best ways to keep your kind of finger on the pulse of the company, stay connected. And I think as leaders, vulnerability is one of the best characteristics. People need to see us, I think, as human.
I don't know. I've never gotten anything wrong, so I'll try that at some point, Jason.
But yeah, that's a big part of, for me, making sure I stay connected, stay grounded, and making sure as a leadership team, we're making decisions that really are positively impactful to what the employee owners are really going through on a daily basis, not what we think they might be going through, and the customers as well.
And that's right, because you got to find out. If you assume, you may not know how they're thinking and feeling about certain decisions that are being made.
I'll tell you what, that does happen too. We had a situation just a few months ago. We brought part of our leadership team together and said, if we had to shift some things culturally in the business, what would you do? And we said, we're going to go through the process. They're going to kind of rank and go through the process. And then, Jason, you're going to decide which ones make the list that we're going to focus on. The number one thing, so 32 people, like 29 or 30 ranked this one as the number one thing. I wouldn't even have had it on the list at all.
Wow.
And so for me, it was a moment of, I've got a blind spot here. I didn't even see it.
Yeah.
And the majority of this leadership group said it was the number one thing we've got to focus on.
I'm glad you asked the question.
Thrilled, right? Yeah. Because if we don't, it's going to be a limitation on our ability to execute the strategy going forward. You're going to have misalignment. You're going to have people who are frustrated with part of the journey. So important to ask the question.
Now, Jason, a lot of people tuning into the podcast, they're trying to figure out what's going to happen next quarter, what's going to happen in 2026. Do you have a crystal ball? What's your outlook for border states?
I wish I had the crystal ball,
Okay.
But so a few things. Maybe I look ahead to 2026. So 2025. Pretty good year for at least the electrical space.
Sure.
A lot of work in AI and data centers, which is great, fueling a lot of good growth. If you look at it's interesting in the construction space for electrical specifically. If you go back over the last couple decades of the construction spend, probably 10 to 20% of that was made up of high-tech type construction. Today, that's 50% of that construction market is made up of high-tech, which is data center driven. So great kind of wave right now. But behind it, maybe a little more soft. And so just curious as to how that's going to play out. I think there's a good, again, no crystal ball, but a good 3 to 5 years left in data center growth and activity. We need to be mindful of what's coming behind that as well. Tariffs has been a big topic, obviously, at NAW and across distribution. I'm just looking for a little bit of certainty, right? Uncertainty.
I think we all are. Businesses need to plan.
Yeah, uncertainty just creates a pause for people on decision making, whether the cash is in the game or out. And getting a little certainty around tariffs would just ease a little bit. I think some of that and get some dollars back in the game on some projects. So looking for that. On the AI topic itself, we just hired a new VP of digital transformation in the AI space, trying to be more strategic with AI. And I think this will be the year we really got to focus on the intersection between AI technology and the people. Like, great, we have the technology. Great, we can improve some processes. How are we bringing the people along that journey?
Right.
Or how do they see it? Are they seeing it as an opportunity and an advantage in their job, or are they seeing it still as a threat? Are we really helping them to have the skills to leverage it effectively and see it positively? So this will be, I think, the year for that. Then we'll see. I think this energy transition going on. So, obviously AI and data centers driving a lot of demand for energy. Electrification as a whole, I think we are going to need every ounce of energy source we can get.
Yep.
Whether it's nuclear, whether it's oil and gas, natural gas, whatever it might be, we're going to need all of it. And
so do you have a view on that from a policy perspective of where we should lean in, or all of the above is the answer?
I think all of the above has to be the answer. Okay. And so I know that, generally people may align certain energy sources to maybe a political affiliation very broadly, but I'm going to tell you, we need every single bit of energy source I think we can get our hands on.
Now, tell me a little bit more about that, because if you're not in the electrical distribution and you're thinking, we got plenty of power, my lights turn on when I flip the switch. Why do you think we're going to need every bit of energy that we can get our hands on? What's coming?
I talked to someone this morning. I can't recall the name of the individual, but in Wyoming, there was a data center that went up, and that data center was consuming more power, more demand for energy. It was like 3 times more than a good portion of the state, like as a whole. And so you think about data centers going up all across the country, the demand for energy is so great within them, we have to produce more energy. And we've got to transmit the energy, across the grid to make sure everyone doesn't have issues with their power, with electricity. So that energy growth, that demand is out there. We think it's real, and we're going to need to find more sources to fuel that kind of growth. And if you talk to the folks in the AI space, they would tell you we don't even understand yet how much we're going to need as far as there's just so much happening. To your earlier point, AI is going so many places. Like, where's it going to go next with generative AI and all the AI agents? How much will we need, as far as, fuel to drive that? A little bit unknown right now. So you talk to utility companies, they're really looking ahead, trying to forecast, how do they put enough capital in the business to expand the grid, to modernize the grid? And everyone's, making educated guesses right now at what it's going to look like, but it's fueling an awful lot of potential need. And we're going to need every bit of energy demand we can find. Yeah,
absolutely. Let's talk a little bit more about leadership, Jason. I get a chance to meet a lot of leaders, and there's different traits to leadership and different ways people lean in. Just describe for you what you think are the most essential elements of an effective leader.
Gosh, I mentioned vulnerability, and so I'm just I'll start there. I think you've got to be connected and you have to be real. I think more than ever, employees, and for us employee owners, they want to know who their leadership is. Not just as, Jason, CEO, here's the title, and, I don't know who he is, and I don't know anything about him, but who is he really as a person? Do I trust him? Is he a person of integrity? Do I see him making good decisions? How do I just feel about his leadership? And so more than ever, I think people care about really the character of their leadership. And so that vulnerability is critical from my perspective. I think we're going to have to look at how we lean into decision-making in the future. So, more and more talent is leaving our industries, as the workforce ages and we're trying to bring more in. How do we bring people in that have the ability to make sound decisions? And so that decision-making, that authenticity, that vulnerability, all really important pieces. Curiosity. We need folks who are passionate about trying to make things better in the industry and in the business. Those are a few of the core tenets, anyways, I would think about with strong leaders.
I think those are good traits. Absolutely. Jason, I know that you're a real proud father, and that being a dad is an important part about your life. How do you balance work and family?
Oh my gosh, probably balance isn't the word I would even use. We talked about just recently, I've got 4 kids, a couple boys in college, a couple girls at home. And I've always told, the leadership at Border States, whether it was Tammy or David in the past, my family comes first, number one. And I'm committed to what I do. I work very hard and I serve the employee owners at Border States, everything I've got. What I've always said is if my family life is faltering, I'm not going to be worth much for Border States. I've got to get that right for everything else to go right as well. So it's not balance, it's really full integration. So my kids, my family, I like that, they know Border States. They know the people that I work with, they know the names, they like to hear some of the stories. We talk about what I have going on, what Border States, what we're doing, what we're focused on, why I'm going here, what I'm doing there. So we bring it as kind of a full kind of family integration. I think if you try to balance it, I think you're always going to be in a place where I think you feel like you should be somewhere else. If I'm with my family, I feel like I should be working. If I'm working, I feel like I should be with my family. I almost feel guilty. You've got to integrate the two. They're really one and the same. And I think more than ever, I think hybrid work, things like that are allowing us to have better integration. I think that's kind of the key to the journey. But don't know your priorities, know your principles. Don't sacrifice those. You don't get a second chance at raising kids and being a good husband, being a good father. You got to get that right. And frankly, I think people in the industry, your employees are going to appreciate that value as well.
One thing I find is I have similar values, and in fact, my boys are here with me at the executive summit, and trying to learn a little bit about what Dad's doing, and but also for your employees and for the owners of Border States, I think setting an example that hey, family time is important, and the boss is taking that family time, you should too, and so I think it's not only good for your family, but I think it's good for the employees to see that example.
Yeah, that openness, that vulnerability, that's a big piece of it. Sharing who we are, how we think, because they're going to work hard. They're going to give everything they've got, as employee owners. They need to know those limits as well. And where they need to lean into the family and when they need to give to Border States, they'll figure that out along the way if they see good examples of others doing exactly that.
Let's talk public policy for a minute. Anything hanging out there either at the state or federal level that is making it a little more difficult to run the business?
If I just think long term for a moment, about policy, I think about immigration, and reform around that, and not to even talk about what's going on today, politically in that landscape. You look at the talent shortage we're going to have long term. I think in this industry, in our customers, we're going to have to figure out a way to tackle that in an effective way. And I don't see us getting really focused on that and driving that forward. So that's a real, not just opportunity, but need, I think, across the industry. If we don't solve that, I think that energy demand we talked about, I think there's going to be things that we're going to be left looking around going, how do we construct this thing that creates that energy source? We need people. Yep. We need talented people who are willing to do, some hard work, but be rewarded for that hard work. And I think immigration is going to be a part of that journey. More than likely.
And, Jason, what's interesting is almost every business leader I talk to will cite immigration in the top 2 or 3, for those same reasons. But you spend a little time in Washington, and there is so little consensus on this issue in particular. The parties are in polar opposite directions. And yet, all the business leaders, I know Democrats, I know Republicans, I know people in the middle and everywhere in between, all are saying the same thing. Yeah. And so I just don't understand how the political leaders just don't quite see the importance of this is for the long term of the country to get that policy in particular right.
Yeah, and the voice is loud, to your point. The voice is loud and pretty unanimous from my perspective on the need for some reform in the immigration space. So we'll see if we can continue to influence and push, and maybe we'll get there at some point. So
absolutely.
The other piece I would mention quick, Eric, on policy is, I think it's talk about energy source, energy demand. Can we find ways to cut down the time frame, the barriers to things that could be like nuclear, small modular reactors, things like that I think may have to be part of the landscape at some point. How do we move more quickly that direction and cut down some of the red tape and time it takes to get those things in place?
Well, there's a lot of companies coming online with those small nuclear reactors, and I think the Secretary of Energy has been part of a company. It's going to be interesting to see what new technology, especially in the energy space, does come online. But there's public policy that can prevent those things from happening or make it a little bit easier. So
that's right.
We'll see. Time will tell.
For sure.
Well, Jason, one last question. I know Border States has been involved with NAW for a while now. Why does your company find value in NAW? Why do you hang out with us in this community?
Yeah, we just talked about public policy. That's a big piece. You guys have a great influence here in Washington with things that matter to distributors. I would say beyond that, it's the people. It's the relationships, it's the networking.
Great people.
I get to come here. Well, great people. I get to come here though, and I get to learn from people, who are doing a lot of things that are similar to what we're doing. Different verticals and products, but the networking is amazing. The best practice sharing numbers, and be able to make phone calls even 6 months from now, a year from now, and say, remember that conversation we had? I'm struggling with this. What are you doing? What are you doing in this space? And so the relationships are invaluable. The conferences, you guys do a great job. This executive summit is always so well done with great speakers, great ideas, and leaves me. I leave motivated, inspired, and fired up to go after it. So,
well, I'm glad to hear that. Well, Jason, you're an incredible leader. You're leading an amazing company, and so I know all the listeners and the watchers today of the podcast were richer because of it. So, Jason, thanks for joining us on the Distributors Deliver podcast.
Thank you, Eric. Appreciate it.